So maybe y'all can see a little bit. I've added just a little bit of white down to lay down some initial texture for myself. And now what I'm going to get started on is what's called the underpainting of the piece. For those of you that aren't familiar with this kind of process, pretty much the underpainting is what gives you most of your shades and shadows. It gives you the base layers for those. So as you start painting some of the lighter colors towards the end, I'm a artist that always tries to go from dark to light instead of light to dark. It's always easier. Sorry, Janice, you say something?
No, I'm just taking in all this knowledge right now. Light to dark. Okay.
It's funny. I feel like I'm on my what's my man's name? Not Richard Simmons. Who was the guy that used to have that little after school paint special?
Oh.
Bob Ross. I feel like I'm on my Bob Ross take today. Not used to painting while giving commentary, but we're gonna make it work.
Yeah, I think this is a really good way for people to learn, get feedback into you and your style, and what caused you to begin doing art, and what you find it so great doing, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really it's crazy just doing this piece, thinking about the similarities between myself and George. It's just crazy. Like, you know, the everything I've read about him and everything that I heard about him before his passing. He's one of the few artists that, you know, did so much work here in Baltimore that I never had an opportunity to meet. So
Wow.
pretty much everything I know about him is off of things that I've read, which is actually a lot because I really go out of my way to study people that have done things similar to what I'm trying to do and just see, you know, and guys like him and Ernie Barnes, who I never met him as well, but I actually was able to get in touch with his family and start a relationship with his son and some other members of the family. But they really set up the blueprint for people like me. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of like transitioning away from athletics into, you know, not just doing art, but being a fine artist, you know, dealing with museums and, you know, having exhibitions and things of that nature. It's like none of us really, even in art school, they don't really teach you the business of art, you know, so you got to look at your predecessors as your example of how to get certain things done, you know. So I've always respected so much about his craft and about, you know, his accomplishments as an artist. You know, I have had family members that attended Morgan State University. I'm actually on their advisory board for their liberal arts college, and I've been on that campus so many times and seen his work so many times. He's actually responsible for all of the sculptures that are in their what do you call it, the the plaza in front of the stadium. So he's somebody that definitely has so much history here in Baltimore. So that connection really made me feel like it was absolutely necessary that I do this piece.
So when did you begin in art? Talk a little bit about you know, that. Was it something that you've done growing up? Did you start doing it in college?
No, man, I was doing art before I could really even form words and speak. You know what I mean? As a kid, I was definitely what they would call rambunctious, hard to handle, energetic. I was diagnosed with a whole lot of different issues and learning disabilities and things like that growing up. You know, I was hyperactive, really had a hard time sitting still and focusing on anything. But the caveat to that was the only time that I didn't have a problem doing any of those things was when I was creating, and I would create with anything. I would steal my parents' aluminum foil and Reynolds wrap, and I'd make, action figures and uh, uh, characters and things like that out of those. I would um, I would just take any pencils or pens or anything around and just like be sitting there drawing for hours. And my parents recognized that early, like, look, the only time we really don't have to worry about containing him is when he's creating something. So they fed the beast at a young age. And I think that was another similarity between me and George Knock. Like when I read about his story, he took to art at a very young age as well. And uh, I feel like kids like us were the lucky ones because I'll say this, and I feel like George and others, and now myself, counted among them, we've seen kind of a paradigm shift in culture, since even I was a kid, right? When I was a kid, it was never considered cool to be an artist. Like
Mm,
nobody ever cared about how good of an artist I was until I became this amazing athlete that everybody cared about. Then it became a cool little thing to say that I was good at. Also, it's like, yo, he can draw too, he can paint, he can do all of these things, but nobody
wow.
cared until there was something to talk about as far as athletics first. So, um, for me, growing up, a lot of my peers didn't care about art and were never exposed to it themselves. And because my parents saw that in me early and chose to feed that beast and involve me in as many arts programs and initiatives as they could find, I was getting enrichment that my peers didn't have access to and didn't really know about or care about. And
Wow.
now, when you look at culture right now, this is probably the first time since I would say like the 60s, 70s that it's really been cool to be an artist again. You know what I
Yeah, I do
mean?
feel
Like,
like there's a renaissance about art coming back.
oh yeah, it's happening right now. It's not coming back. It's going on. Like,
Yeah.
and being in
Mhm.
Baltimore, I can actually see it with my own two eyes. Like the crazy thing is, it's like when you think back to the Harlem Renaissance, right? I ask myself often, and I ask like my peers and my contemporaries, we talk about it sometimes. I wonder how many of the artists that were integral figures of the Harlem Renaissance actually knew what they were a part of and how big that moment in time would be when you look back on it generations from that point, right? I don't
Right.
know if any of them really grasped how powerful the movement that they were creating is, but now we kind of do have a way to measure that a little bit because you see it on social media, you see it in culture, you see it in news. Like art has become a part of the pulse of our society in a major way again. And you're seeing a lot of artists of color, as they always have, really pushing themselves to the forefront of a lot of those circles and discussions. And me being an artist in Baltimore, I'm able to see just by my contemporaries here, like it's people that I've grown up for years working with and watching that are now national names that, people all over the world know about. And, they know about them through their artistic voice. And that was something that wasn't really a big deal, years, like not
Years
even,
ago.
I'm not even talking about like 20 years ago. I'm talking about like 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like when I was in
Mhm.
college majoring in art, when I was getting out and just starting my career, it was at that point. So it's really amazing to kind of see that paradigm shift taking place and to actually be a part of it in a sense.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a really good point. I think that I definitely can't speak for them, but I think what's so great about a movement, the authenticity of it is that people probably don't realize what they were a part of while they're doing it. They're just a part of it to get the messaging or the
Right.
awareness out of it, you know, and then the movement kind of becomes something that grows otherwise.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Like think about Nina Simone, her quote, "An artist's one job is to reflect the times in which they live." You know what I mean? Like art has always been our way of controlling our narrative as a community, especially for people of color in America. Like art, whether you look at the blues, whether you look at during slavery times, the spirituals that were sung and the art that was made that were remnants of our African heritage that was stolen, like art has always been how we communicated our existence and how,
Definitely the language. Yep.
yeah, exactly. It's the language of our culture, our soul, our heritage. So we incorporate that naturally almost in everything that we do. And the arts is just such a strong representation of that because that's one of the arts are one of the few things in this world, right? That it can supersede any barriers really that we create amongst society. So let's say we have a barrier between us as far as religion, you know, or a barrier between us as far as race or lived experiences. Art is an opportunity for us to shed those preconceived notions and take on somebody else's understanding of their truth. And I think that that's really powerful because what it gives us the opportunity to do is people that have absolutely nothing in common with one another can both look at the same piece of art and see two completely different things in it, right? And what they'll realize as they're talking to each other about it is, yo, there's probably like a million different miles between this dude's world and mine. But the space between us is the space that allows us to grow if we shed our preconceived notions and engage with one another. And art
Hmm.
is one of the only things that makes that type of engagement safe. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Very
Like
safe
through,
space. Right.
yeah, through visual art or through dance or through music or through poetry, you can actually have a conversation that you might not be able to have with just words. You know what I mean? You can express certain beliefs and experiences that it's hard to give voice to in other circumstances.
Yes.
And go
We
ahead.
have we have someone here, Lord Knock. Thank you for joining. Shout out to Lord. Comment here from Lord says, art today seems to have evolved into many more mediums than when George began his craft in the 70s. Fiber artists, artists using other palettes than canvas and paper, people now using AV and 3D in art. And it came about, you know, it has evolved from so many things from George.
Right. And especially when you think about the fact of his biggest contribution. Well, I'm I'm giving my opinion of his biggest contribution artistically was the amazing sculpture work that he did. You know, the bronze sculptures. I remember the first time I saw one of his sculptures. My favorite ones that he did were the jazz sculptures, the jazz themed sculptures, because you could literally feel the music like as you looked at this piece. You will look at this man playing the trumpet and the way he was leaning back, and it almost seemed like a Ernie Barnes painting,
Right.
like manifested in physical form in front of you. And the beautiful thing about art is it always breeds more innovation. So where you have somebody like a George Knock who decides to master these specific crafts that he decides to master, you have people like myself, people like the younger generation that's coming behind me that look at my stuff, look at his stuff, and look at everybody else's, and then they say, wow, like how can I take this to the next level? So yeah, like while he was doing these bronze sculptures, now these kids are thinking about 3D printing and you know what I mean, like actually creating and animating entirely new and different worlds. And I think that is in a sense exactly what art is supposed to be. You know, it's supposed to inspire innovation. It's supposed to inspire and challenge you to take it to the next level. You know,
What was your inspiration for what all the attendees today are drawing?
say it one more time.
What was your inspiration, or why did you make the selection on what everyone is drawing today?
Um,
Actually,
I didn't make the selection. The NFLPA had decided that they wanted to find a way to honor George Knox's legacy, and they figured that this was the most appropriate a platform to do it as any, with him being a lifelong artist. So they were looking for somebody that they could get to commission to do a piece. And, you know, when you just looked at all the similarities between our careers and our lives and all that kind of stuff, it was just a really natural partnership. You know, as soon as they hit me with the idea, I said, let's do it. You know what I mean? So that's really how we got here.
and what are you canvassing right now? Like, what was the reason behind the selection of what you're working on right now? What
Well,
we see.
what I'm working on right now, oh, hold up. So
Yeah,
right
let's
now,
see.
here's where we're
Mhm.
at. It's a portrait. I'm working on a portrait of George Knox. Here we go. This is where we're at the minute. It's kind of hard to get it in its perfect, but we're in the underpainting phases right now. I'm starting to go through and hit certain areas where the shadows are going to be with some of the darker colors and all that kind of stuff. And then as I bring some of the more vibrant ones in, you know, his face and characteristics and all that kind of stuff are really going to start to show through.
Okay, are you ready? Have people in the chat saying, "Wow, that looks amazing already."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Shoot. Look, I appreciate the
You
compliment,
found
but I'll be
George's
honest with
head
everybody.
perfectly.
I hate all of my pieces until I'm pretty much like done with them. Like
Oh,
at the point that I start to like it, I know I'm close to being done. So I appreciate the
well, they say
compliment.
the artist is probably their own worst critic. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
you have
Absolutely.
comments coming through. They're saying that you found George's head perfectly.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Nah, you good, bro.
You have Marlene Harley is on here. She said, "That's my brother. Love it." So
Wow, wow. It's a pleasure to informally meet you. I heard it was a whole slew of y'all sisters.
yeah, Marlene is in here. So we
and that's
appreciate
and
that.
that's another thing that me and him had in common. We're both the oldest. I'm the oldest of four, though. Him being the oldest of nine is way more of an accomplishment. But you know, as I'm looking at his story, and I'm in one of the articles, I think it was probably the Baltimore Sun article. One of his sisters was talking about uh, their little routine every week, because similar to me, he would be the one that was responsible when his parents were away for looking out for his younger siblings. That was my job. And he had this thing that he would do where he would take them to the zoo to watch them feed the lions.
Mm.
And I just thought that was so amazing, like, because it showed those qualities that made him such an amazing human being. You know, he had them from such a young age. You know, just reading his sister's recounting of that experience, of those experiences, because apparently they did it all the time. It just really warmed my heart. Everything that I've read and heard about George has really been amazing. So I really consider myself honored to be able to do a piece in tribute to him. I just hope I do it justice. So I'm glad that everyone likes it so far.
So the colors that you're using for this piece, are they from an actual picture, or are you kind of deciding and giving your own interpretation on the
Yeah,
colors?
so I got a couple pictures of him that I'm
Yeah, let's
going
check
off
those
of.
out.
This is one reference image that I have of him. This is him in one of his sculptures. I think this is a beautiful image of the brother. And this is the other one that I'm going off of. It's kind of hard to get all the detail, but
Definitely
you
can
know,
see it.
I'm going back and forth between those two. But me, I try not to ever really just go off of one reference image. You know what I mean? Because I like to try to find like the soul of a person. I know that sounds corny,
Mhm.
but I really like being able to dive deep into the figures the subjects that I'm painting. So I wanted to look at at multiple. So I got about 6 images of him in my phone that I really like, that I kind of toggle back and forth between. Um, because it's like, a person's eyes look different, in a certain under a certain way. A person's smile looks a little bit different depending on how the curve of their lips are going when the camera flashes. So I really want to be able to capture him in a way that I feel like is authentic.
Yeah, I don't think that that's corny at all. I think that that is what then connects the person that's viewing that art, knowing that the artist, attempted to capture their soul or, something, a deeper
Right.
depth of the person that they're painting. I think that's what allows us then, as the observer or the person, appreciating the art, to feel it.
Right. Like I love, like, you ever seen those videos of a person getting an image of a loved one that has been painted for them? The loved one has passed away or is no longer with them, or, for whatever reason. And you see them just sobbing and weeping. It's like they're not just weeping because they missed the loved one. They're weeping because the artist has found a way to capture something that was real, to capture an element of their soul. And that never really goes away. That's something that, once it's recreated, it lasts forever.
Hmm.
So that's something that I always tell people. It's like, man, when I'm doing this art, man, I'm not doing art that I want to be hot just for today. I'm doing art for forever.
Now, how long will it normally take you to finish a piece like this?
I plan on being as close to done with this as possible by the end of this session. Now, there will definitely always be some things that I'll go back and touch up later on tonight when I've had a chance to step away from it for a few hours and then come back and look at it again. And also, with this being something that we're going to be gifting as tribute, I want to make sure that this is something that his family would appreciate by the time that I'm done with it. But with most pieces that I'm setting out intentionally on working on, I can knock them out in a span of a few hours. Now, some of the more dramatic work that I do, like some of the work that you might see behind me, that
Hmm.
stuff can get worked on for days, weeks at a time. You know what I mean? Depending on how elaborate and how in depth it is. But it all depends. Sometimes when I sit down at a canvas, I don't always know what I want the end of it to be, and that's a part of the recreation of any work of art. You'll see that what you want it to become changes throughout the process of you finishing. So a couple of these pieces that I have around here in my studio now, it's like they started off as one thing and they finished off as something completely different. So I like to keep myself open to that process being organic and authentic. So I really try not to put myself in a box, from that standpoint.
What most excited you about being able to do this portrait of George?
Probably just the fact that I have a public stage to be able not just to create a piece of art, but to, with my own voice and action, show and share how much of an inspiration he was for artists like me all over the world. It's a real terrible thing. I think when um, we constantly experience people not getting their flowers when they can smell them, and their loved ones not getting their flowers when they can smell them. And that's one of the things that hurt, when I heard about his passing, because again, I never had an opportunity to meet him. I never had an opportunity to look him in his eyes and tell him, you know, that he helped pave the way for somebody like me, that he helped to create a world in which I can exist and thrive in my artistry unapologetically, like, and with my work being the type of work that it is, like, who knows that George Knox didn't want to do some work more along the lines of the radical type of work that I do from time to time. But again, he lived in a completely different time. And when I read about the discrimination and the blatant racism that he experienced while at Morgan State, like, he was on the first team. Now, I'm pretty sure about all of this stuff. Don't get me wrong if I mess one of these up, but I'm pretty sure about all of these because these are the ones that really stood out to me. He was a part of the first team that all black team that played in Yankee Stadium during a time where racial tensions and divisions were at an all-time high. He also was a member of. He won a black college college national championship, and then the next year they ended up going down to the Orange Bowl down in Orlando, I believe, and the racism that they experienced going down to Florida at that time. He said it was almost impossible for them to get into the stadium because you had a
Wow.
white supremacist crowd that was lined up basically,
Barricading
yeah,
probably.
barricading them outside of and then they had to fight their way out. You know, those type of experiences were not uncommon for black athletes and black students across the country. And the fearless, unapologetic way that they went about carrying themselves, the way that they did, the way that they always handled themselves with class, the way that they always handled themselves and showed themselves to be an example for those that would follow, creates a world where a black man like myself can be unapologetic in his message and his art with his platform because people like him fought for that platform to be able to be accessible to somebody like me. Like, that's the reason why it's so important for me to, to do this tribute because it's like I still can't say that to him, but hopefully a few of his family members heard that. You know what I mean? Hopefully another
Right.
aspiring artist, will hear about his story and say, man, let me research, his accomplishments and find a way to acknowledge that, for myself. So yeah, like that's why it's so important to me. I look up to him so much for so many different reasons in so many different ways, that it just made sense. I had to do this piece.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case y'all see somebody running around in this room, my brother Kyle stopped by to get some footage. I actually think it's fitting that he's here though, because he's another one of those artists that I talked about, who I've known for years, just being here in the city of Baltimore, but is now somebody that people all over the world are familiar with his work through the people that he's worked with and some of the things that he's done, So I think that that's another example of artists like us having a platform and an opportunity is because of artists like George. How you doing too, my brother? I didn't get a chance to say what's up when you came in. Yeah, absolutely.
So another comment here that we have, interesting that Aaron captured the motion in the sculpture because George looked for and found out how to capture motion in his pen and his ink drawings when he first started drawing animals and nature in the 70s. And this is from a family member.
Wow. See, that's the stuff that I love to hear. You know what I mean? Like, because, obviously that's a correlation that I thought that I saw, but to actually hear it from the family's mouth, like that just confirms it.
Now, are there other things that you paint on besides canvas? Was there a reason why you chose canvas for this piece?
Yeah, because I felt like a canvas, like whenever I'm doing something that is going to be presented, um, I try to make it a canvas work just because that's how most people are used to taking in fine art, but I have street art roots as well, so I do spray paint, I do airbrush, I do oil paint, I do acrylic, I do ink. Like I got sketches and stuff like these are ink sketches. Some of
Got it.
the
Oh, wow. Okay.
ink stuff that I got going on. This right here is a guac piece that I've done. You can see kind of some of the texture running through
Mm-hmm.
there. So yeah, I do it all. I write books. Like anything artistic is is me. So I don't limit myself in terms of like what I will or won't paint on. Like I don't have any in the studio right now, but I paint on cardboard. I have two
Oh,
exhibits going on right now where I have a painting of cardboard, like a huge piece of cardboard. And one of them is a portrait of my son, and the other one is a portrait of a young black girl reading revolutionary texts. But whatever kind of effect I'm trying to give, I'll use the mediums necessary to communicate that. So if I want it to be like a gritty street aesthetic, then I'm going to use street art to make that happen. If I want it to look like fine art, then I'll use all the fine art tools and dress it up and put a bow on it. You know, it's just a matter of what it is that what kind of feeling am I trying to evoke from my audience is really kind of like where I go with my color palette, you know, and everything else, you know. So for something like this, like George was a dark skinned brother, you know what I mean? Very chocolate brother. So yes, he's going to be chocolate in this picture, but you're seeing with the colors that I'm laying down, I want to make it as rich as possible. You know what I mean? Like I want his skin to glow, you know. So I'm starting off with the lighter colors, and then I'll move down to the darker colors in certain areas. But by the time I'm done with this, I want his skin to look as glowing and beautiful as it did in the images that I used as a reference.
So you have a question in the chat. It said that you played in Canada. Did you find anything in their culture that has helped your art or your inspiration?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was one of the only reasons why I went over. Like because I played for Toronto for the Toronto Argonauts after I was released from the Cincinnati Bengals. And when I was released from the Bengals, I had already kind of made that decision that I was gonna start that transition from the NFL to doing my artwork full time. I had talked to my agent a little bit about it, but I hadn't retired yet. Um, there were still some offers on the table with a couple teams. I think the most realistic offer that we had on the table was a interview, which if the interview went well, would be followed up with a contract with Indianapolis Colts. But I wasn't in a position where I felt secure committing for another full year. That if I sign this contract, I'm going to honor this contract, right? But deep down, I knew that I didn't know if I had a whole year left in me, you know, in terms of just like how much I really loved it and wanted to be out there. I was at a point where I wanted to be doing my artwork. I wanted to be spending more time with my children. I wanted to be spending more time doing the community work that I do now. But the entire time I played in the NFL, I played in Buffalo, played in New York, Cincinnati. None of those teams I ever went to the playoffs. You know what I mean? Never had an opportunity to even compete for a championship. Like the teams I played on, we struggled. So Toronto hits me up after I get home to Baltimore from Cincinnati, and they say, "Look, we understand." They talked to my agent. They understood the place that I was in. They were like, "We understand that you're not really sure what you want to do going forward, but we're finishing up our season right now, and we won the championship last year, and we're getting ready to go into the playoff push this year. We need some extra help, so we'll give you this contract to come out here, but we'll also pay for you to have a studio downtown where when you get done with practice, you know, we'll make sure that you have transportation to go back there and you can just do your art for this entire time." And like that really allowed me to immerse myself in the Canadian culture, like the Toronto culture, really. And what was beautiful about that was it was so similar in many ways to different cultures that I've been a part of growing up. Like my mother is half Jamaican, half British. So, you know, like I didn't know that there was such a strong West Indian culture in the Toronto area. I didn't understand that like there were so many food options and all of this stuff. So I'm just going to different art spots. I'm going to different eateries. I'm meeting people. I'm studying different types of art that I'd never really gotten into before. That time was really dope. And it was a time for me to really kind of reset before coming back to the States. and really being sure that this transition was something that like my heart was set on, because it got to the point where like, yeah, like, I'm at practice and I'm doing everything that, I'm supposed to be doing. But in the back of my mind, it's like, man, I can't wait to get back to the studio and get back to work on this. It's like when I started feeling that, I knew, all right, it's time. It's time to pull that trigger. So yeah, that was a amazing experience for me in Toronto.
Yes, we have the same West Indian background culture. So
Oh,
yes, there's
really?
heavy presence of us in Toronto, Montreal, where I came up as well once. I think a lot of us family came from Jamaica to Canada before they were able to come to the States.
Yeah.
So a
Yeah, and
huge.
I didn't even realize that. And I had family in Toronto. Like my mother has my mother who is the one that's Jamaican. She has a lot of family up there, and they would always come down to the States to visit. But I had never gone up north to really like experience their culture, and it was really just an amazing experience. I'm somebody where traveling inspires me so much creatively because art is, in my mind, art is the way that we express our culture, express our lived experiences and all of those things. But honestly, when you travel, you actually get exposed to like what the culture actually is. So it's like I can depict it, you know what I mean? I can write about it, I can paint it, but to live it, to experience it, to eat it, to, you know what I mean? To sit down at a bar and actually like have a conversation and like learn different things about yourself, about the world, things that you never, were put onto as a child. That part to me is dope, and that's one of my favorite like parts about traveling, traveling all over the world.
A lot of similarities here. So we have a comment. Which one of us is making the callaloo? So I will make the I will do ackee and saltfish. I don't know what you're doing.
Hey, look. That's another one that you can't play around with neither, because if you don't know how to cook the ackee right,
I am
it'll be a long day.
So I guess they have in the callaloo. Also, a shout out on here. We have David Mack, who is also celebrating his HBCU brother and Morgan teammate and fellow NFLPA clay artist. So wow. As you can imagine, we have a number of different artists that are on here right now in celebration of all that was George Knox and his amazing legacy and life and contribution to the artist space.
And for everybody on here, I don't know if there's any way, Janice, for you to put this in the chat, but I do know that Morgan has a scholarship fund that is set up in George's name that they recently established. So I think that there's a link. There's a link on an article somewhere. If you just type in George Knox's name in your Google search engine, and you go to news, one of those articles should come up about that endowment in his name. And I think that there's a link for people to be able to donate. I think that would be a huge plug for us to be able to make right now, just because of how much he was for Morgan State, not just as a player, but even coming back. Like anybody going into that stadium sees his work. Anybody that spends a significant amount of time on that campus has interacted with his work in some way, shape, or form. And, look, he won a black national championship there. So I think it's only fitting that that anybody that wants to be able to contribute to that should be able to look and find the information on it.
Boom. Yep, I have added it to the chat, and it speaks to his amazing widow, Mary, who established the scholarship fund.
So just an update. This is where we at now. I don't know. Yeah. So again, we're going from light to dark, starting off with just regular flesh tones, and then we're going to start to bring the detail out of this thing in a little bit.
Can you talk about the outline? How long did it take you to do the outline of it? And what's the process from your starting something that is so personal and something that is going to be so impactful? Kind of what is your what's your system?
My outline is really kind of basic. My outlines are really just shapes. There's not a whole lot of detail there. It's just shapes and shadows. Areas where I know I'm going to be doing a significant amount of shading, I'll kind of lay down some graphite in those areas. And basically, like, I try to make sure the curvature of his head and the width of his cheeks and the length of his chin is right. Like, it's not a lot of detail in my sketch. The details start to come out as I'm laying color down. As I'm laying color down, I start to make it thick in certain areas and lighten it up in certain areas. To lay my browns down and then lay the whites and the beiges over them to kind of give them a little bit of a highlight. So I try to let the only areas where I actually put a significant amount of detail when I sketch are the eyes. I try to make sure I have a hard, well, this right here I've already painted, but I sketched a hard line of the nose and his mouth. I sketched a hard line of his mouth. But aside from that, anything else doesn't matter what you sketch it as. You're gonna have to paint it. You know what I mean? So doesn't make sense wasting a whole lot of time on your sketch, because all that really is gonna matter is how the actual paint that you're laying down speaks to you.
Now, have you done any sculpture work similar to George? Is that something you're
I've done
looking
similar. I've done sculpture work. I will not lie and say that my sculpture work is similar to George. George was in a class all by itself when it comes to sculpture. Sculpture is not my most utilized method of creating, but it's something that I do incorporate into pieces whenever I feel like it's necessary. Sometimes even in my paintings, right? I'll make them 3D. Like I've added masks and things like that I've painted and sculpted onto pieces that I was painting, and used different materials to kind of like hold it down. I've done some portraiture sculpture. Never sculpted with bronze. Definitely plan on trying that out at some point. But me and the kiln have a love-hate relationship with each other. So I've always loved the process. But once you get to that process of the kiln, I'm that artist where, like, once I spend a day or two actually like beating on getting the sculpture exactly the way I like it, I put it in the kiln and it cracks, I'm not making it again. Like,
Oh,
I'm not,
wow.
like, I'm heartbroken and I'm going on to something else. Like, but that's why I have so much respect for sculptors, because it truly is like one of those processes where, like, you never know. Like, very rarely do I ever mess a painting up to the point where, like, I never mess a painting up to the point where I can't fix it or save it. That's not the
Mm.
case with sculpture. Like,
With sculpture.
yeah, you lose so many. And it's just like one of my next door neighbors is one of my favorite sculptors in the city. And, I've watched him lose at least 15, 20 pieces, amazing pieces that he spent so long working on. And he just has to go right back to starting from square one. Nah, I don't have that kind of patience. So, like,
Wow.
every now and again I work on it, but I feel like as I get older, I'll develop more of a patience to be able to keep on working with it.
Wow. As you speak to the intricacy of it, I think that just even makes what George was able to do even more impactful, because it seems like sculptures, it really does take a unique skill to get the ones, that
Oh
he
yeah,
has done.
especially when you're like, yeah, like, especially when you're doing like commission pieces and pieces for galleries and major collectors. Like, that stuff is expensive. It's expensive to create. It's expensive to really elaborate on. I mean, to really embellish on it. All the materials that you use, none of them are really cheap. And it's never a waste, because at the end of the day, like, you're learning lessons as you're doing it. But if you spend a couple $100 on materials and then you end up losing the piece, you're still going to feel like that was a waste of however much money you just lost. So being able to have the stones to keep on going at it, my bad, Kyle, to keep on going at it, even when those kind of things happen, it takes a lot of resolve. And some artists just don't have it. Like I'll admit, sometimes I don't have that kind of patience. And I'm somebody where like that works out for me well when I'm painting, right? Because if I were to get, obviously I'm doing this piece to trying to finish it here today, but if this was just any regular piece and I get frustrated with it, I can just grab any of the rest of these canvases, and work on those and decompress and, not think about it as much and then come back to it. It's not as easy to do that in sculpture. A lot of times you're working on one piece at a time. Okay. So this is where we're at right now. So now I'm letting everybody know as well. So how I typically do paintings is I always go from light to dark, trying to make sure that I'm not having to unnecessarily paint over thick, dark lines and things like that. But I always leave the details for like the fine details for the last part of the painting. So next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over all of this in a little bit darker of a shade in certain areas, just to make sure that, again, that he's as beautiful and chocolate of a brother on the canvas as he was in real life. And then I'm going to start to play around with the details to start to bring it all together. And then as I'm doing that, I'm also going to start to lay some colors down in the background as well. Planning on making sure that the background the colors incorporated into the background are Morgan themed. So you'll be seeing some orange, some blue, and some white back there. I think that was fitting just because of his amazing history at Morgan. And, I think that, that served as one of the strong connecting pieces between the two of us. So just keeping everybody updated with where we're at and where we're going.
So we have Linda Lau, who is also celebrating legacy on here today. I just think that there's just I don't know if juxtapositioning is the right word. I just find that as athletes, athletes tend to have, say, the ability to be nimble with plays, often having to sometimes, tiptoe into, the end zone or things of that nature, where you see like artistic abilities. I think there's some natural transitions or natural relationships between a physical athlete, which in a lot of ways, when they make catches, sometimes it is a
art. Oh yeah. I tell people all the time, it's like, the way Kyrie Irving dribbles a basketball is artistic. You know what I mean? Like the way Odell Beckham Jr., does his one-handed catches, that's an art form. The way Patrick Mahomes is able to throw from every angle, Lamar too, in some ways, like every single angle, there's an art form for that. I mean, there's an art in that. The thing that I've always been surprised by, though, and I'm starting to see it become less of a thing now, with, again, art actually becoming something that people look at as cool again, is we're disconnected from that connection. You know what I mean? We're disconnected from how connected the athletics and the arts actually are, because we're told at a young age that there's something different. You know what I mean? Like we're told that, for example, the first sport that I played wasn't football, basketball, wrestling, baseball, boxing, or any of those things. It was gymnastics. First sport my parents had me do was gymnastics, because they wanted they wanted me to be flexible. They wanted me to be athletic, but not just an athlete in the sense of, you know, a big bruising, you know what I mean? Like imposing they wanted me to be healthy, you know, but they wanted me to have certain things that you got from gymnastics that other people in my neighborhood growing up in Baltimore did not understand. So it's like, yo, what do you like? Hold up, you do gymnastics?
Right.
Like, like you just over there with the girls in the onesies. You do gymnastics, like so. Um, it would be the same way with art, right? When they would find out that instead of going, you know, to this like basketball camp during the summer or this football camp, I'm going to take classes at Maryland Institute College of Art because I got a scholarship through this program. You know what I mean? Like I did an art competition and like now I get a scholarship and I can go to Maryland Institute College of Art and take classes while I'm still in middle school and everybody else is worried about like sports camps. Like, you know, I saw those as being like the experiences that I wanted to have. And like again, I had parents that really like fed that beast and were like, all right, you know, if this is what he wants to do, we're going to push him and we're going to support him in it. So I say all that to say now when we have that conversation about, you know, athletes being artists and all that kind of stuff on the court, I want our athletes to be more open to actually practicing art off the court, off the field. You know what I mean? Because is every athlete going to be a full-time artist like myself and exhibit all over, you know, the world and all that kind of stuff? No. But like, can every athlete benefit from the therapeutic elements of art? Absolutely. Can every athlete benefit from having a space where nobody's requiring anything of them and all they need to do is actually express what they're feeling and what they're going through? Absolutely. You know, when you're looking at, you know, some of the issues that are going on with mental health and emotional wellness, some of the issues that are going on around head trauma and things of that nature, the arts is actually something that helps in all of those areas. You know what I mean? So where you have so many athletes that have been turned off to this idea of the arts as not being manly or not being something that they should get themselves involved in, we're in situations right now where arts might save some of these guys. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the arts might actually help what you're going through, you know, and I try to be an advocate as much as possible for people, you know, just exploring and experimenting, man. Like see what it is that you love and find a way to let that be a part of your self-care routine because I guarantee you'll benefit from
I just think it's so telling that you're doing this portrait of his face. I looked um, at some articles and things that he's done and how sculptures were so important to him because it was really important for him to also translate our history. And he often said, our history is told in our faces. So I think that
it.
you doing this, um, you know, portrait right now is just so full circle.
That is a fitting quote too. Like
Yeah.
our history is in our faces. Like that's powerful because there's a lot in that saying. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like the pain of 1,000 years is in those faces. You know,
Exactly.
the joy of a lifetime is in those faces. You know what I mean? Like all of your loves and hopes and dreams and aspirations, you wear those things in your facial expressions. You know what I mean? Like your face is a visual representation of your story. You know, you ever met certain people where like you look at their face and you automatically feel calm and at ease. You don't know them, you know what I mean, but they got the kind
Right.
of face that you just feel
Or
comfortable with.
or conversely, you look at their face and you know their story and their history or are part of what you think their life would be. And
That
I just
messed
find,
me up in college. The first time
yeah,
I met people that could look at me and tell me things about myself that I didn't know freaked me out. And I went to Penn State, right? So I didn't go to a HBCU like George Knox did. I went to one of the biggest PWIs in America. So at Penn State, I'm, where George was, in a situation where the majority of people on campus, look like him, come from where he come from, share that same cultural connection and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to a school where, I'm one of probably 3 or 4 kids in a class of 1,000. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? That looks
Right.
like me. You know what I'm saying? And even though the numbers were crazy like that, there was still people. It's Penn State. It's a global campus, so it's people from all over the world there. So we had people that were from Africa there. We had people that were from West Indies, from all over the place. And we would go into the cafeteria at certain times, right? And the cafeteria is a very tribal place. Everybody kind of sits with their clique, their group. So all the kids from Africa sit together, all the athletes sit together, all the you know what I mean, all the frat guys and girls sit together. So me, I would always go and I would sit with the athletes for a little bit, but I would like mix around and I would go in and I would try to like talk to and meet people that like I otherwise wouldn't have discussions with. So me and the kids from Africa would have lunch together sometimes, and they would play this game, right? Where they would like every black person at Penn State played the game where like it's like, oh, pick out how many black people you see as we're sitting here like that walk through the hub, right? But this game that they would play actually messed me up because they wouldn't just pick out the black people, but they had this part of the game where they would try to pinpoint where in Africa these people came from. And they would use the crazy, like for some of them, they would use like a facial structure, right? For some people, they would use like complexion, but then they would also say, look at how this girl moves. You know what I mean? Like look at the rhythm that they walk with. You know what I mean? Like that's Yoruba right there. And I'm like, I'm sitting there and I'm watching them play this game, and I'm like, yo, y'all don't even realize it, but y'all are messing me up right now. And they're like,
Right.
wow, like what's wrong? Like there's nothing wrong with the game. And I'm like, it's nothing wrong with the game, but I don't think you understand that even the stuff that you might not even be right about, you have a context for something that most of us black people in America won't even know about ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we have no way of knowing answers that you guys already have because you know a culture that we never got a chance to understand. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, and that like for me was just like a transformative thing because it was like it really says, and it ties back to your former statement of a person's whole life, like their whole history is in their face. Like you can look at me and tell me things about myself that I don't know. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like that's an incredible like weight when you think
It is.
about it. Like
Well, I borrowed that from George, just saying. Like that was something I read that is what he found inspirational and directional in doing his sculptures.
mm.
So my question though, when you said you sat with the other athletes, so you being a linebacker and George being an amazing running back, would you guys have sat together or how were that how were the linebackers and
Oh,
the
I
running
mean,
backs?
we would have sat together. I ain't had problems with people on offense unless we was on the field. If we was on the field, then yeah, we would have gone at it. But at the end of the day, I was somebody
Okay.
where like anybody I played with or against, once the game's over, it's over. And if I did my job, I really got nothing to be upset about. You the one that got to figure out how you feel comfortable hanging with somebody after they just kicked your butt all day. But
I
I
just had
know,
to throw that in there since you guys were on,
yeah, like
on
me, we would have smashed heads and we would have gone at it. But at the end of the day, we would have linked up, gone, painted something, sculpted something. You know what I mean? Like we had similar interests. So any of my teammates that I ever had that like were into art or things like that, like man, I used to go to exhibits with my teammates because I wanted them to see. I kept on telling them, I'm like, yo, this art world is dope, man. Like I'm like, yo, you don't think that it's cool, but like, yo, come to this exhibit with me, come to this art opening with me, come to one of my art shows. And they never realized it until they actually started coming. And like, yo, they had so much fun. Like every single one of them that came, they would leave and they'd be like, "Man, I had a blast, Aaron. Like, yo, this was like a good time. Like, yo, anytime you're doing something like this, let me know." Like these guys still to this day hit me up when I have art shows and stuff like that, and it's like in their city or it's somewhere where it's accessible to them, and they say like, "Yo, man, I'm gonna come through," because this is something that they were never exposed to. But that didn't mean it's like just because we wasn't never exposed to certain things in the hood didn't mean it wasn't for us. We just never learned about it. You know what I'm saying? So what happens when you're a grown man and you're just learning about things that you were never exposed to as a child? You know what I mean? Like that's why I'm saying like arts exposure, arts education, like these things are so important because it's literally like it's life lessons in this stuff, man.
Yeah, we have a question for you from one of a member of the championship team of Morgan State that played along with George, who
Uh-huh.
defeated AMU and Miami 37-6. They needed me to point that out. Are you from Baltimore?
I am. I am. What can you don't tell me you can hear it in my voice. I ain't say two or nothing.
No, I guess they're just intuitive. They just said, yeah, you were born in Baltimore.
Yeah, I think I've already said that. They might not have been on when I covered that earlier, though. That was one of the main reasons that, I really wanted to do this was because, as somebody who is, born and raised in Baltimore myself, I'm still here right now. I'm an educator here. I do all of my community organizing work here. Um, George has been an inspiration of mine, for years. Never had the opportunity to meet him, read everything that I could read about him. And artists like him and Ernie Barnes were the ones that really trailblazed the path for somebody like me to even exist. They really put the blueprint out there of what it looks like to transition from being an NFL football player to a full-time artist and an artist that's actually like making a good living doing it. You know what I mean? Like they really showed what was necessary, in order for you to make that happen. And without them, I can't say that I would really be able to do things the way that I'm doing them right now. Because again, even if it's just seeing an example of what it looks like, a lot of us don't ever really feel confident in pursuing something until we see an example of what it can be. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know that I could be an artist, period, until I met my childhood mentor, Larry Poncho Brown. And he was my first example of a black man that looked like me, that was a full-time artist. This man never had like a job outside of the arts world. And he lived on his own terms doing what he wanted. You know what I mean? Like until I met him, I did not know that it was possible to do that. And then seeing Ernie Barnes and George Knott and what they were able to do as former athletes that did the same thing, I'm like, okay, that's what that looks like. Like anybody that's known me since a kid will tell you that I've always been that kid that told people like, yes, I'm going to play in the NFL, but I also would tell people I'm also going to be a famous artist. Like those two were like one and the same. And I couldn't say that I could confidently feel that way if not for people like George Knott and Ernie Barnes. So like this means so much to me, not just because of the Baltimore connection or because of the fact that we both played for the New York Jets. We both had similar lengths of career before deciding to do something very similar. Like, there are just so many similarities that make me respect and honor him so much that I felt like it was important.
What did you study in college? I know that George studied psychology. What did you study
I
at
was
Penn State?
um I was an integrative arts and broadcast journalism major. I double majored when I was at Penn State. So integrative arts was my primary, and broadcast journalism was my secondary.
So Miss Mary Knox just um, put into the chat that she is a part of this conversation and she is here. And I am telling her that we are beyond honored to have her here.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm absolutely honored to have her here. I love to hear her opinion of where we at so far. Obviously, it's not close to being done yet, but I think that we making we're making progress. You know, we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there. Doesn't have a soul yet, but I think that we're a few layers away. We're a few layers and some minor details away from you being able to say, "Oh, I feel something in that."
Yeah. We have a comment also in the chat that Ernie, another one of your amazing inspirations, had an amazing exhibit in North Carolina about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm good friend. Like I never got a chance to meet Ernie or George, but I was able to get connected with Ernie's son, who is the head of his estate now, and helps to really handle all of the artwork and things like that that he still has exhibited. So it's been great to really build a relationship with him and kind of learn some of the behind the scenes information on how his father made that transition and how he made sure that in his art career he did things on his own terms.
Mary said, "Wow, it looks like him."
Oh, really? I'm glad she thinks so far. I'm glad. We're not done yet, so I'm still I'm still
Yep,
not
and
satisfied.
we're not even at the end.
Exactly.
So I read somewhere that George's his first broadcast, Scatback, depicted his very own playing position because he knew all the mechanics of the moves, and he was then able to transition that into that sculpture. Is there any thought of you doing something that really is reminiscent of, you know, your moves or being a linebacker or directly correlating to your position that you played?
Yeah, I have some artwork like that I've done. Anybody that is interested in checking that out, you can just Google Aaron Maybin art. You can go on my website, www.aaronmaybin.com. You can check out any of my books that are also available on my website. And yeah, I got a couple exhibitions that are going on. But yeah, I take a lot of elements of my personal narrative and incorporate that into my work. And obviously, with my athletic background being such a strong part of my story in my life, I have incorporated elements of that into my work a decent amount over the years. I don't do it as often anymore, not because I don't like think that, not because I think that there's anything wrong with it, but just because I don't want 10, 15 years from now, everybody to just be able to think about me as the football player painter. You know what I mean? Like at this point, this year will be this year will be will be my 6th year doing my artwork full time. And during that time, I've exhibited all over the world. You know what I mean? I've exhibited in Jamaica, Hong Kong, England, all over the United States. I've exhibited at Art Basel, all of those things. So it's like at this point, I'm really starting to make strides as an artist. You know what I mean? So football is always going to be a huge part of my narrative, but I never want to do myself the disservice of pigeonholing myself as being like the football guy because people don't look at you seriously as an artist when they find out you're a football player. They gotta like once they find out you're a football player, they gotta actually see what you've done before they give you your credit. Because as soon as they hear athlete, they think, oh yeah, this guy doesn't take his art seriously. He's an athlete. You know what I mean? Like, and then when they actually go and research me and find out, no, I majored in this in college. Nah, I was taking college classes in art when I was in middle school. I did my first mural for Baltimore City when I was 11 years old. Like, I've been an artist. You know what I'm saying? So like, I try to make sure that my narrative and the work that I do is always authentic to where I'm at in my life. So right now, um, right now I'm just really having fun with all of the opportunities that are coming my way. It's been a really perilous year that we've all just gone through, but I've definitely been able still to do some things artistically that I'm been very proud of.
When did you actually start playing football? I've read some things about George, and much like you, I think art was the first thing that was picked up by him, and sports came
Mm-hmm.
later. When did you start actually playing football?
I started playing football real early. Like I started playing all sports early. Like when I think I was about 5 when I started playing flag football, and then I think I might have taken a year off to do art and baseball and some other stuff. But like I played sports, like I told the people that were on in the beginning, um, I was a really rambunctious kid. Like I had a lot of very special qualities about myself that that made me unique at a young age. So my parents realized early on that there were really only 2 times that I ever like just sat down and focused on anything, and that was when I was creating artwork, or that was when I was playing sports. So when they saw that early on, um, they really fed the beast. They got me involved in arts programs. They got me introduced to my mentor, who went on to kind of take me under his tutelage for like the next well, for the rest of my life, because I still look at him as my mentor. But but they also had me very heavily involved in sports. So I played football, baseball, basketball, wrestling, boxing, um, you name it, everything. I did everything, and um, especially after my mother passed away, um, my father was kind of looking for anything that was positive that he could get me involved with, because I was going through a lot, during that time. And that was when the therapy aspect of art became very apparent for me, because after my mother passed away, I shut down in a lot of aspects for a lot of people. Like I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to do. I didn't really want to do much of anything. But art was kind of what allowed me to find my voice again. I would express myself not through words, but through artwork. How I was feeling, what I was dealing with on any given day. Um, what I was hoping for. Anything, and um, that became something that like I never let go of. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, give me 1 minute. I have to change this water, and I shall be right back. I am back.
Welcome back. Just
All
using
right.
that time to look at some of the sculptures in Legends Plaza and George's amazing work.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Every time I'm on that campus, I try to stop by and just take a look at it. I would encourage anybody that's watching that is in Baltimore to do the same. Definitely go see them for yourselves. It's different. It's different when you see art in person than when you see a picture of it. You know, it's a different feeling. It's a different experience altogether.
Oh, wow. Okay. I see what you're saying now with the colors and how it's brought out all
Yeah,
different
trying to
features.
get trying to get this angle right so it can. All right, yeah, that looks pretty good.
No, that's great. We have a question in the chat. What are some good ways to get your children involved in art now? And I guess an additional question to that is, you can speak to some of the art programs that may or may not be as available and accessible these days.
Yeah. Well, that honestly, that's what my whole foundation was started around in 2009. Project Mayhem. We started our work here in Baltimore in response to statewide budget cuts that we had to our school system that pretty much resulted in all of our public schools cutting their arts and music programming. So, all of the public schools at the time, well, not all of them right away, but eventually most of the schools had to let go of their arts educators and terminate those programs because of lack of funding. So my with art being what it was in my life, and for it to have been so transformative for me, I was really passionate from my first year out of college to do something to address it. So obviously, we started advocating for the funding for arts programming to be reinstated. But I'm not somebody that just complains about a problem without finding a way to get involved myself. So my foundation, we started going into the schools that had those programs taken out and supplementing our own workshops and programming that would allow them to continue in some way, shape, or form through us. I was young enough and ambitious enough where I actually thought that me and my position as an NFL player and the amount of money that I was making, that I was actually going to be able to like fix the problem. That was like my rookie year when I was like really ambitious and really thought that we could just do the impossible. But then I realized how deep the rabbit hole was. I realized, the lack of resources that we had and how much money it was going to be able to take to actually address the problem. And we realized we were in over our heads. So we changed the model of what we were doing a little bit to go from trying to do citywide programming for all of these, schools and students. And I said, I have to find a way to take what I do, what I've created, and synthesize it into something that I can do with one group of kids for an extended period of time and show the quantitative data of the impact that this kind of programming has on their education, on their life, all that kind of stuff. That was the point in time that I became an educator. So I've been teaching for the past 5 years now. And during that time, I've created a curriculum around the idea of using art as a tool for social change and activism. And that curriculum is called Art Activism, and it's built around a workbook that I also created that is really an interactive educational tool for educators and teachers and mentors and parents to be able to use to introduce their young people to this idea of how we use art as a tool, you know what I mean, to address things, to actually bring awareness to certain things that we're passionate about. So all of those things are available. If you I have the workbook available to anybody that's interested. That's available on my website. In terms of like programming that you can get your kids involved with, I don't know where this person lives and what kind of things they have going on there. But I would definitely say that now is a day and age where you don't need a straight up program to expose your kids to the arts. You know what I mean? We got YouTube tutorials out here. You know what I mean? Like we got different processes that you can look up on Google. Workshops, activities, all of these things. Like it's readily accessible for you if you care enough to actually go looking for it, right? And the biggest thing that you can do is just have creative materials around at all times. Like all of my kids are just like me. They're downstairs right now, probably making a mess of everything. Like because like in my house, like similar to what my parents did, I just have reams of paper and just like big boxes of color pencils and crayons and sharpeners and literally I don't have to tell them to do anything. Like just randomly, periodically throughout the day, they just go on these creative tirades, and I feed the beast the same way my parents did. My not my youngest. My youngest is 2 months at this point, but the baby the baby right above her, Aaliyah, she sold her first piece
Mm.
about a month ago. And now she got the bug. Now that she done got a couple dollars in her pocket, she like, hold up, somebody paid what for this? So now, like every time she finishes some artwork, every time all of them finish some artwork, it's like, Dad, what you think? Like, you know, I know money ain't the only thing that we looking to get, but like, what you think? Somebody gonna like this? Like, so I think that the big thing is it's like when a kid is interested in something and you can tell they're interested, just help to give them the tools that they need to really like explore it further. You know, sometimes that's like, you know, materials, sometimes that's like a lesson, you know what I mean? Like a mentorship is important. It's not everything, you know what I mean? Like but it is important. Like there's a lot that I've learned from my artistic mentors over the years that, you know, I definitely wouldn't be the same quality artist that I am now had I not gotten, you know what I mean, that information and that sewn into me from them. So I definitely think mentorship is important, but just exposure, man. Like if your kids are interested, you be interested. You know what I mean? Take them to an exhibition. You know, find artists on social media and things like that that both of you like, and you know what I mean. Like and go to see one of their shows and actually like have a conversation with them about how they got started. You know, reach out to artists like myself. Like I try to, you know, as much as possible, make myself accessible via social media, via my other platforms that I educate through. You know, a lot of us are out there, you know, and a lot of us are really willing. Like my brother Kyle right here, if you in Baltimore, he does photography classes for kids and adults. You know what I mean? Like it's you know, these enrichment activities and these artistic opportunities are out there. We just got to be diligent about finding them. You know what I mean? Investing in them. You know, getting our
Yeah,
kids involved.
I think that's a great point. I actually have a friend who sews, and she just made sewing available to her daughter, just with her daughter being around and seeing her do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became in the recent year where her daughter now has expressed her own interest, and she was able to gift her a sewing machine. So I think that just feed the beast and encourage, you know, those kind of abilities or those kind of creative outlets you see in your child. I think we do have something nowadays with social media. We don't have to rely to those kind of structural programs to encourage our child these days. There's so many other outlets.
Art isn't just in the museums anymore, man. It's in the streets. Like it's actually in these streets. And I know the streets is kind of off basis to a lot of people now with COVID-19 and everything. But even in the midst of this, creatives like myself, we're finding ways of still getting it done and trying to make those things accessible. You know what I mean? We're getting ready to do a summer leadership academy here in Baltimore. Me and another former NFL player, Torrey Smith. We're taking over a program at the Hilton Rec Center, and we're going to be doing a program for 45 youth in the city to participate in. And arts are going to be very heavily integrated into that as well. You know what I mean? I feel as though people don't really understand how serious it is, but there's a symbiotic relationship between the arts and every school subject. You know what I mean? Like the arts will literally make you better at any school subject. Like, and there's data out there to prove that. Like, you know, the arts, it's where we get our creativity from. You know what I mean? Like innovation, like the whole idea of somebody taking an idea that's already been created and then taking it to the next level. You know, like we were talking about earlier, and George created an amazing market for himself as an artist with his bronze sculptures, correct?
Correct.
But think about all of the artists, right? That because of people like George, now they're doing their sculptures in 3D printing innovative ways that never existed before. Like, how do you think that technology even gets created? Somebody wants to create something that doesn't exist. And we say, like, look, the mechanism for creating this doesn't exist yet. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna build it.
Vision.
The same way I say, all right, our school system is lacking this. It misses
Vision.
this. I can complain about not having this all I want, or I can stop complaining and build it and say, look what we're doing. This right here, everybody should have this. I built this myself. I'm not asking by anybody for permission, but these are the results. You know what I mean? Like, um, I just really feel as though the more that we can actually grasp that as a society, like we'll be able to do so much more, you know, because like I don't want to live in a world where the arts don't influence every single aspect of my day. Straight up. That's like it seems like the wackest day ever. No, think about it.
Vision,
Like think about your whole
all of
day,
this
right?
happens from
And then
vision.
take everything artistic out of it.
Yeah, all of this happens from vision and there being a lack and people wanting to create something that has not been done or has been done to a different aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So another question has come up in the chat. They said you spoke about it a little bit before and you did, and that they echo that you're 100% about the stereotypes with athletes transitioning into art. If you want to speak a little bit more about that and kind of, the work that you're doing through your foundation as
Mm-hmm.
well in terms of combating some of those stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty simple. Most of us are familiar with it in some way, shape, or form. And especially my vantage point is that of, a kid from Baltimore, grew up on the west side, in an environment that was less than ideal, but not uncommon for anybody in my situation, right? Life wasn't the best, but I'm not one of those people that goes around acting like my life was worse than anybody else's. Like we went through things. But in an environment like the one I grew up in, one thing that has always stuck with me is how at a young age, a kid is made to accept very harsh realities about the world in which he lives, right? You're meant to basically look at drug abuse, death, murder, all of these things as things that are normal, right? And you're put in a situation most times where you experience these things at a very young age, right? You experience somebody close to you being killed at a very young age. You experience loss, you experience heartbreak, you experience all of these things. And usually most people's reaction to these type of traumatic experiences is, yeah, that's messed up, but toughen up, figure it out, move on. You know what I'm saying? You're a man, so you're supposed to be a whole lot of things, but soft isn't one of them. And what we call the things that we entitle soft, from a very young age, is anything that doesn't fit into the archetype of like ultra masculinity that we're force fed, right? So we're force fed images of you fine, bro. You force fed images of athletes, entertainers, and you're force fed images of black men like yourself, but you're force fed images of yourself only through a specific scope. So you're always seeing yourself being hard. You're always seeing yourself being cold. You're always seeing yourself being turned off to emotion. But then at a certain point, you realize that's not how you're supposed to live life, right? Like, this is not actually a healthy way to go about living. And it was at that point that I realized that the only reason why these things are like weaponized against us is because from a young age, we aren't shown a healthier way. We aren't encouraged to try things that don't fit into that ultra masculine archetype. We aren't encouraged to expand our horizons to things that are outside of the box for somebody that comes from where we come from and lives where we live and how we live, right? So a lot of times people turn themselves off to the arts. They turn themselves off to just regular traits like empathy and understanding. And we close ourselves off to a lot of life experiences that we could very much benefit from. you know, and it ends up more often than not being to our detriment. So I'm one of those guys where, because I'm like a living, breathing example of how the arts can actually save a person's life. You know what I mean? Like I really am adamant about encouraging other athletes and just like men in general. Like, yo, especially when you're young, like, yo, like try that, like try out for that play, yo. You know what I mean? Like see what happens. Take that art class. You know what I mean? Like you might enjoy it. Like go on that trip, like to the ballet. Like actually take it in. Like, yo, it's some amazing stuff happening. Like all of these things that we close ourselves off to. As I started to open myself up to those things, as I got older, I realized how much I was getting from it and how much I was missing not being exposed to that at a younger age. You know what I mean? So I'm one of them dudes where I'm always trying to hold my fellow athletes accountable about saying like, yo, you can't be hard all your life. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, God forbid you grow up thinking that life is one way, and then you start having daughters, and then you start looking at the world differently and realizing, oh man, hold up. I'm not even equipped. I'm not even equipped to give my child these things that they actually need because I turned myself off to that side of my humanity for the lion's share of my life until this point. You know what I mean? Like we're actually depriving ourselves of things that we need because we don't want to be seen as being outside of that box that society tells us we're supposed to stay in.
Right.
Let me see. I need something darker. I need something darker.
And I think you made a good point earlier where you said that at least with your art, you know, you can always fix it. And I think the great thing about art is that it just allows you to not be so pigeonholed. You know, for math, 2 + 2 is 4.
It allows you to not what?
Not be so pigeonholed. For math,
oh yeah,
you know, 2 + 2 is 4, and you know that that's what it is. But for art, if you were going for a particular look or a particular
2 + 2 in art is whatever I decide it's going to be.
Exactly.
Like,
I think that's just an amazing space of freedom and power to give to, you know,
and how often do people have that kind of freedom in their day-to-day experience, right? Where it's just like,
right.
yo, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, what if I mess up? What if you don't? What if you paint a masterpiece? You know what I mean? Like, what if, and you don't even have to paint a masterpiece. People don't even need to like it. If you like it, that's enough.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like create something that makes you happy. Like actually create something that like makes you proud to say like, yo, I spent time working on this. You know, that's what I'm trying to get at people. Like it's not about what monetarily I can get from my art. Yeah, I like being able to make money off of my work. Like that's obviously any artist wants to get paid for their stuff, but that's not why I create. I don't create for monetary gain, you know, essentially. Like when I create a piece of art, I create something that I want because I want it to exist. And then at the end of the day, yeah, like I spent years acquiring this talent. So yeah, there's a price tag on that. I'm not giving it away, but I'll give the game away. If somebody asks how I did it, oh yeah, I got no problem. I got no problem showing you that because you can't just do that through osmosis. Even if I tell you exactly how I did it, if you don't put don't put those years of time in, you're not going to be able. You couldn't do what I do on your best day, and what I can do, and I couldn't do what you do on my best day. Like that's my thing. It's like my gift and my talent is mine. Your gift and your talent is yours. You know what I mean? Like there is nothing that there is no gift that God has put in your heart that somebody else can do as well as you. You know what I'm saying? Like, so my thing is once we figure out what that thing is for us, you know, now we got to be responsible about actually making sure we get the most out of it. You know what I mean? If I don't take advantage of my gift, it's not anybody else's fault. And
Right.
if I don't actually take the time to develop and cultivate my gift, then I can't blame anybody else for my lack of success.
But I think ultimately what became so inspirational about um, the irony of all of this, what became so inspirational about George's life was that he too was inspired, and through his inspiration gave us what we now find inspirational. It's just everything in art for me always becomes a full circle story. And that's what's so unique about it, you know? Kind of like, for whatever reason, the stories have been put out there that George's mother gave him clay as a child, and that began
Yeah.
his love affair with the arts, similar to how
Similar to how I had the aluminum foil and the Reynolds wreck. You know what I mean? But that's what I'm saying. Like art, art, as in life, as an energy, it can never be created or destroyed. It is like the energy that I'm putting into this canvas right now. It's inside me. I'm translating this energy from inside myself onto this canvas. And that energy, when shared with other people, will reciprocate other inspiration and other energy. Like it's a cycle. Like, and that cycle never ends. When I die, there'll be a kid that looks at something that I create, and that same cycle will play
right.
again and again and again.
Oregon State, every person that visited that
That's where we at right now.
campus. Oh wow.
Try to, yeah, there we go. So skin complexion, we starting to get a little closer now. Matter of fact, we only at 150. I thought we would have spent more time than that so far. We doing good.
You were doing okay on timing for you. You'll have enough.
Oh yeah. This will be done today.
I believe we're done at 3.
Uh-huh. I'll I'll say at least I'll be close to being done at 3. By the time I post on my Instagram the finished product, there are gonna be a couple people that say, "Yo, you said you was done when we ended. You definitely added like 3 or 4 more things." I'm like, look, once I step away from the piece for a couple hours, like, oh wow, his wife. Oh man, I saw that one.
Yeah.
Oh man, I appreciate it so much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. That touches me. That touches me. If anybody, if there's anybody whose opinion I wanted,
Right. That's who you wanted it. Yep.
I needed Mary not to weigh in on it. Like, thank you so much. That really touches my heart. I hope you love it just as much when you see it in person. Oh yeah. Now's when it starts to get real. When you start breaking out the smaller brushes.
I know.
That's when you know the details are coming.
I just was going to ask you about the difference of the brushes and stuff like that, but I think that's a lot of, the kind of skill and technique that you learn throughout the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so the same way I say I typically go from light to dark with all of my everything on the painting, I try to go from large brushes down to small brushes as I go deeper into the painting. So I'll start off the painting with a bunch of fat brushes that I can juice up real wet with the paint and get a full clip out of it when I'm laying my stuff down. But as the layers start to pile on top of each other, and the painting starts to crystallize more into something that's close to being done, I want to go to the smaller brushes because now I'm going into creases and folds within the skin and I'm trying to bring out those details. So when you see you know, like the right now, I'll show you. So this is where we're at right now. Kind of focus on this eye right here because I'm
Okay.
getting ready to do some stuff. So I'm
And are you looking at one of his images from your iPad as
yeah.
inspiration?
So I got this picture sitting on my iPad right now. As I said, I kind of go back and forth between these two.
Got it. I love that one with the sculpture.
Yeah, man. Like the smile. If I could get if his face was as large and his eyes were a little bit more open, I would have tried to capture that image exactly. You know what I mean? But like there's certain things about it that just made me more comfortable um doing this one more so than that one. But it's such a beautiful image. You know, even the way the light is glistening off of the skin and all that kind of stuff. But now with me being at this point in the painting, I'm going in on little details. So I'm gonna focus now on this eye for a couple minutes to really get some of those details solidified. And again, I'm trying to put it so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing, but every brushstroke is intentional. Might not look like it from afar, but every single brushstroke is intentional. Just like I feel like it probably was like every stroke of his hands was intentional for him when he was sculpting or painting or sketching.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting that gentle bear vibes coming
Yeah,
through.
yeah,
Was his
yeah.
affectionate name? Yes, definitely getting that energy coming through.
Arian, I need you to relax. My son down there going off. You can hear that?
And
Yeah, man. I apologize in advance for anybody that gets the background noise. Look, life and times of a full-time dad during quarantine. Arian, Arian.
I think everyone that's been on a Zoom call during quarantine has understood that background noise, so it's perfectly okay.
I understand. Hey, Amir, tell Arian to come here.
How long did it take you to learn how to do dimensions like that? That's really incredible.
Um, I've already yelled down a couple times and told you to quiet down. I'm pretty sure you didn't hear me because that game was on. So if that's going to be a problem, then the video game can go off. You understand me? Quiet down. That's pretty good. You can't even see what I'm working on. How you say it's pretty good?
Now that sounds like 100% supporter.
Yeah, my daughter has to get nosy. Come on, go ahead, take a look, and then go back downstairs. Wow. Wait, I colored that before. Her. Yes, she's in one of my coloring books. Everybody saw you now. You got your mission accomplished.
You have a question in the chat. Have you ever use the concept painting or drawing using the right side of the brain?
Say it again.
So there's a question in the chat for you. Have you ever used the concept? I guess there's a concept in our an artistic world of painting or drawing using the right side of the brain. And I guess
Yeah, there is. So I do exercises sometimes where I test myself out in those ways. Like my favorite one to do is so I'm naturally right-handed, but I'll paint and draw with both hands sometimes. I'll do things where I'll do sketches without looking at the sketch. Like I'll just look at you and do a portrait of you, just looking at you, not and I'll do other pieces where like once I put my hand down, I don't pick it up. So everything
oh,
I do is a line.
it's a
You
continuous
know,
flow, yes.
yeah. So I do those as exercises, but I don't really spend too much time with those. I do those kind of like as change ups to keep me on point. But it's just like I look at exercises like just like any kind of physical exercise, right? You're stretching and working out your muscles. You know what I mean? So artistically, it's good to be able to stretch yourself out in that way occasionally, um, to really keep yourself fresh.
Typically for paintings like this, how much time does it take you? And is the time determined by the intricacy of the painting, or by the size, or by both?
It depends on not necessarily the intricacy of the painting, but how intricate I choose to get, right? Because, like, for example, with this piece, right, I could have just like there's like a paint by numbers approach that you can use to doing a piece like this, where like you just do one flat light brown to start off, right? And then you go in with a brown that's a little bit darker and you hit like a couple of the shadow areas. And then you go in with a brown that's a little bit darker and you go in, you hit the darker shadow area. Like that's a way like that. And doing it that way is easy. It's fast. Like I can knock out a painting in 30 minutes like that. But when I look at those type of pieces, like, no disrespect to anybody that does them, but they don't have a soul to me. You know what I mean? It's just like, why not just, why not just make it a cartoon? You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm gonna paint, I'm going to paint. Like I'm going to lay lots of colors down. I'm going to have like a pretty diverse palette of different things that I'm working with. I want I want the painting to glow. I want it to sing. You know what I mean? You uh so you have to kind of approach it a little bit differently in that sense. So I would say usually a typical time for me to be spending on a piece is like I say 4 or 5 hours.
Mm.
But again, there are certain pieces, like even pieces in this room right now, that um, have been worked on much longer than that. So that's not like a line of demarcation that I try to hold myself to.
So I guess then that kind of just leads into another question. How do you know when it's completely done for you? Since you can always
Usually somebody around me is
okay.
telling me like, yo, like, dude, I think if you do anything else to it, you might mess it up. Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like usually it's like, my lady will say something, my kids will be like, yo, what else are you gonna do? Like, you know what I mean? Like, be
Mhm.
like, look, man, it's done. But it's almost like, I don't know, when you're a painter, like your artwork is like your baby. Like, you never like it's always growing up. So you're never gonna be like, all right, I think this is like fully done. There's always gonna be something on it I look at and I say this could be a little bit tighter, this could be a little bit better. But yeah, usually it's somebody else around me that says something to me like, yo, man, I think I think you might be done. I think you might be done with this one here. And then I do certain strokes by accident that I actually like. I gotta figure out how I did it. So you see in that eye area that I told you about before, how like there wasn't really that much detail or anything right now, but now you can see like a couple of the folds in the skin, the eye lid area is a little bit more detail there. So it's just like the smaller brush allows you to be able to go in and do cool stuff like that.
So I think, we're in our final hour. Definitely want to thank everyone else for being on the line as well, honoring, doing this Smocks Jocks in memory of George Knock. Just to point out that this is our annual Smocks and Jocks. And it's done every year during Super Bowl weekend to allow NFL players to showcase their artistic abilities while supporting the charity arm of the NFL PA.
Definitely one of my favorite events every single year. I participated multiple years now. Love that they're doing this. Andre is not just a Penn State alum and brother of mine, but an amazing artist in his own right. And I definitely always love an opportunity to work with him and the NFLPA on this event.
Was definitely waiting for that Penn State connection to
knew it
come
was
out.
coming. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. We are all that. All that.
I knew it was coming.
All of that.
So I definitely just wanted to give an additional shout out to the Professional Athletes Foundation. It is our charitable arm of the NFLPA, and it's created specifically to strengthen, to support, and inspire players as they do their second act. And, with that, I kind of just wanted to lead into, our athlete and movement. And if you want to speak a little bit about, your journey, you spoke a little bit about it earlier, but if you want to highlight anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'll reiterate a little bit for anybody that wasn't on earlier. I very similar to George's life. I was an artist my entire life. Always passionate about it. Always studied it. Majored in it in college. And I used to always say, as a kid, that when I grew up, I was going to play in the NFL and I was going to be a famous artist. I would say those both simultaneously. And most people would like look at me out like I was crazy just for saying one of those things, let alone both of them. But I really genuinely believed it. And I didn't just believe that it was possible, but I made it a point to go out and do what was necessary to prepare myself to be able to do that, by majoring in arts in college and, always practicing, beating on and fine tuning my craft, even during my years in the professional league. And at a certain point, I really I felt led to transition away from the game and to do what I'm doing now full time. And really, it's turned out to be an amazing blessing. In addition to the stuff that I'm already doing artistically, it's allowed me to sew back into my community and my hometown as an educator. You know what I mean? As a community organizer. As a drafter and creator of public policy. We actually have a piece of legislation that's up on the floor right now that is called the Community Emergency Response Act. Recently, myself, Senator Chris Van Hollen, and Councilwoman Karen Bass from California, and this piece of legislation is all about. It's important actually that we talk about this. So right now we're in a very pivotal moment, as a society, as a culture, a very important moment in history, in the aftermath of not just a global pandemic, but a year where we saw, mobilization around not just the country, but the world. Yet again, after, more senseless acts of unprecedented violence against people of color. You've had a bunch of different rallying cries from, defunding the police and things of the like to, community reinvestment and all of that kind of stuff. And, we as a society have been very polarized along those fronts. Certain people feeling as though, we can't put police in a certain position where they don't have the resources necessary to do their jobs. And people like myself in the community who feel as though if we invest in community, we won't need to put police in situations that they're not trained for or prepared for. So with this piece of legislation, we actually found a way to, at least for the time being, meet in the middle on the idea. We have drafted a piece of legislation that basically would use federal funding instead of taking money directly out of the policing budget to fund these community-based responses to certain things that cops just don't have training or the necessary time in their job description to be responding to these calls. So they would really be in a backup capacity to train professionals who would be better suited to making sure that that these situations stay de-escalated and everybody remains safe. So things like that provide an opportunity for us as a culture and a society to move forward. And people with positions and platforms like athletes, entertainers, such as myself, we're trying to find as many creative ways as possible to use our platforms to actually get some of these solutions realized and accomplished during a time like this where, we may seem divided, but at the end of the day, we all just want to find a way to find a better way, So I think that using the arts as a platform towards those ends has been so, important and transformative for me. And I've tried, since my time transitioning into being a full-time artist, to always encourage others to use whatever that platform is to try to get some of these changes accomplished. Like we can't talk about the problems, but for so long until it's actually time for us to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty. And I think that we're in a society right now where everybody is used to complaining, is used to talking, is used to, arguing about the problems. But now it's time for us to start putting our heads together and saying like, all right, what are the solutions? You know what I mean? Because, Einstein's definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing the same way and expect a different result. So if we're going to prove ourselves to be different than that, we have to do what hasn't been done before. We have to have the courage to go where it's never been gone before. And I think that our artists have always been the vanguard, really, of championing these narratives and these movements over time in history. So I don't see anything that's being done from my perspective or standpoint as being any different than what was done by George Knott, Ernie Barnes, Emory Douglas. The list goes on and on. Like I have so many, James Baldwin, W.E.B. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, Ella Baker, Billie Holiday. These are all people where when you look at the history of our people in this country, people of color, our narrative has been dictated and determined by mass media who cares little about maintaining the authenticity of it, and our artists. You know what I mean? And again, as I said earlier, I don't want to live in a world where the arts is not an integral part of every single one of my days. it's a very boring world to live in, and I don't want any part of it.
Yes, and to quote you, it's a whack world.
Oh yeah, it's very wet,
It's very
very
whack.
wet. Like
Um,
I challenge anybody on this call right now to think about your day to day, or think about your best, and then take everything that has anything to do with the arts out of it. Tell me how whack that day sounds now.
I couldn't even imagine.
Right, right. Most of us couldn't. I definitely couldn't. It's a big part of every day for me.
So you had a question that came in. I think it was along the lines when I was trying to ask you about your brushes and the selection of them. And obviously, a huge part of that is training, but then it becomes your own individualized style. So, question I
Mm-hmm.
got for you: do you find painting with acrylics or oils more challenging? And if so, why?
Um, acrylic would have to be more challenging because, like, oil is the best thing in the world to paint with.
Hmm.
Like, hopefully there aren't too many kids on it, but like, I only have one way to describe oil paint. Oil paint is like an orgasm on a canvas. Like, it literally, like the texture of it, like the contour, the way that you can blend it, like it, and it stays wet forever. Like, that's part of the thing, is that's the only thing about oil that's frustrating. You can't, with acrylic, you can literally take a hair dryer and go over it a couple times and it'll be dry.
Mm.
With oil, that thing's going to be wet for about 2 weeks,
Oh,
maybe 3, depending on, like, if it's really good oil paint, it'll stay wet even longer than that, especially if you layer a whole lot on there. So like, oil challenges your patience, but acrylic, because it dries so quickly, you have to do more in a shorter span of time.
mm.
You know what I mean? Like, the only way I couldn't finish this painting today if I was doing it in oil. You know what I mean? Because it takes so long to dry, and that allows you to revisit it and make it better so many more times, like, as it starts to dry. But with acrylic, like, if you don't do certain things, as soon as you lay the paint down, when you go back to blend it, or when you go back to do anything to it, it's already dry. So now you're like painting over something completely. Uh,
So you
but even that doesn't really get frustrating. It's just something to get used to, you know. It's kind of like the unwritten rules of the game. You know, I like knowing what those rules are so I can choose to break the ones that I don't necessarily care for.
so are you using acrylics today?
Yes, yes, this is an acrylic paint. A little bit more detail added. Starting to work our way, back through. Adding some stuff, taking away others. Trying to mix a little salt and pepper into this beard here. I mean, into this mustache here. That's also why I try to wait so long before I start using any type of black, because it's so strong. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like, black is unforgiving. You know what I mean? Because once you lay it down, you can paint over it, but it's like you still gonna be able to see the evidence that it was there.
Wow.
So like,
It's
I
still
try to
strongly
only,
through.
huh?
It's
Say it
still
again.
strongly, it strongly comes through.
Yeah, yeah. Like, even if I painted over it, you still be able to see, oh yeah, there's a black line under there. So when I'm using black, you can tell, like, I'm doing really fine details, folds that are really hard on the skin, hard edges of where your face would end. Um, I use it pretty heavily in my eyes though, and y'all be able to see, like you can see the eyes right now,
Hmm.
and then we'll look back at the eyes in about a minute and a half, well, maybe a little bit longer than that, and we'll see if you guys can tell the difference of all the details that's in it.
So when you start using black, it's not necessarily that you're coming to the end of your painting, but you're coming to a more defined areas of your painting.
I'm coming to the end of that specific point. So, like, for example, where I've used the line, where I've used black right here on this fold of the skin, I'm not going
Okay,
to go over that part anymore.
got it.
That part is done. You know what I mean? Like now it's just the area around it. I want to show the difference between the light space right above it and the dark space beneath it. But that line is the point of demarcation. The eyes, I always say, man, the eyes are the window to the soul. So I always try to make it. I feel like if you do your eyes right, no matter how good you do on everything else, you do the eyes right, a person will look at it and they'll say, I feel like somebody's looking back at it. You can mess the mouth up, you can mess the nose up, you can mess a whole bunch of stuff up. But if you get them eyes right, there's a soul there. So I try to really make the eyes a point of focus in every one of my pieces because I want people to look at these pieces and see somebody that was breathing, see somebody that's alive, see somebody that has the glow of life in them.
So we had a question earlier where we spoke to about how to get your children into art, and I know that you teach art as well. Do you
Uh-huh.
find it hard in teaching art to critique art because it is so personal and is so individualistic? How do you
Say,
critique it?
say it
How
one
do
more
you,
time. Do I find it difficult to critique art?
when you're teaching it, especially with children, how do you go about critique since it is so individualized and it is so personalized? What do you find is your style in terms of teaching children and developing their style at the same time?
Just being honest with them. You know what I mean? Like I don't I don't tell them that a piece of work is great if it's not great, but at the end of the day, I'm proud when I can tell that they have committed to selling out on making this piece of art as authentically as they decide to, right? And the beautiful thing about critique and all that kind of stuff is art is subjective.
Right.
So even if I don't like it, who gives a damn? You know what I mean? Like if you like it is the only thing that really matters. But I look at things from like a more like technical aspect. Like I want to know, do you know the rules basically like of this painting that you're doing? And then even if you know the rules, like you broke this rule right here, was this intention? You know what I mean? Like I want to know those
Mhm.
things, like because there is no picture perfect cookie cutter way to do art. Even though a whole bunch of people will try to charge you a whole bunch of money to tell you that there's not. You want to know why? Because all of my favorite artists break every rule. You know what I mean? Like every rule that they taught me about in high school, college, and every other academic space I've been in, I break them all the time. And nobody can tell me that me breaking this rule isn't still amazing art. You know what I mean? Like, so the whole idea of you having to do something a certain way for it to be good, I just don't buy into that. But again, I want you to, so like the same way as if you're playing a sport, right? If you're going from college to the NFL, right? There are certain differences in the game. You know what I mean? Like there's certain rules that are different at a pro level than they are at a college level. Same as like from a college to a high school level. So I want you to know the rules. You know what I mean? I want you to know the rules of the field that you're on, but then I want you to know them just enough so that you can choose how you want to break it. Because at the end of the day, I want you doing good art, and good art um, forces you to have an opinion. So if I create a good piece of art, you should either love it or hate it, right? But you shouldn't be able to be indifferent to it. I want to force you to have an opinion. You know what
Mm,
I mean? So like, if you hate my piece, I did my job. If you love my piece, I did my job. If you see it and you're like, that's where I'm like, nah, man, I blew it. You
right.
know, so um, but I'm kind with my kids because the hardest thing with kids, especially kids in Baltimore, it's getting them to be vulnerable. It's getting them to be
Right.
open, getting them to be honest. So a kid is not going to do that if they're honest and then you just crap all over them. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I'm not babying you either. If I think you could have done better, I'm going to hold you to a higher standard. But I'm going to be proud of you actually going out of your way to immerse yourself in something that for you is uncomfortable.
Yeah, support them in that honesty.
Right.
Correct. Hmm.
Okay. So, eyes now.
Cool.
Feel what I'm saying? Like, it's like the more detail you start to put, you can actually like feel it a little bit more.
Are those like white flecks that are even in the eyeballs?
Yeah.
That, wow. Okay. Jesse Ray, I agree. Those eyes do look awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jesse. We still got about 75 people with us.
We
I
do,
don't
and
know
we
how
still
many of y'all have been with us from the beginning, but for those of you that have been checking in all day, I really appreciate you.
we definitely
Could have
appreciate.
been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Marlene Harley, thank you for your comment. I agree. Aaron is very amazing. So thank you for that. I
Thank you so much.
I have put again our the Professional Athletes Foundation page where the feature of George Knock appears. It is linked in the chat. Definitely check that out. I will also relink Aaron's website where you can have all of his information, all his social media handles, great thing that he's doing with his organization as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Also, for any of you that are watching that may reside in the Maryland or Annapolis area, I have an exhibition going on at the Maryland Hall through the end of this month. I think the 28th is the last day that you can actually go to view it or purchase work. But even if you can't make it there, but you're interested in checking out some of the artwork or potentially making a purchase, they have a virtual version of the gallery available as well that you can visit online, where they have all of the pieces available for sale as well. Uh-oh. I'm painting live. I gotta call you back.
Oh, I interrupted your call.
You did.
Okay,
I love you though.
I
can't talk. I'm painting live.
Call me with Parker.
All right.
All right, love you. Bye.
My sister wants to see my youngest daughter. She be just
That's okay.
calling. She don't even check on me.
They're getting a genuine look into your life right now. So this is
Hey,
amazing.
look, I'm all right with it. That's the ABCs of me: family man, artist, community guy. That's about all. You can tell my story pretty simply.
Shout out in the chat to your exhibit. Definitely worth making a trip down to Maryland Hall. I myself will be checking that out before the end of the month. So you're getting a thanks for all your work with Athletes for the Arts last week.
Now we got a little bit of color in the lip. I'm gonna add and build on that a little bit. I'm gonna start to bring a little bit more color to this area right here and smooth all of this out. But starting to feel like there's some soul in here now.
So also in the chat, we have George's daughter, who I believe is still based in Baltimore. She's in the chat, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but she thanked you as well as the PAF, I'm sure, for honoring and celebrating her dad's life, his influence, inspiration, all of that.
He's definitely been every bit of that for me. Like, definitely don't have to thank me for that. It's my honor. It is my honor and a privilege. So now, regardless of what we had going on for the rest of this time, I feel good. We got his wife that's giving her blessing, and then the daughter is also waiting, and a few of his siblings. I feel like those are the only ones I ultimately care about. Like, if y'all can see him in it, if y'all can say that y'all actually like how it's going, I can't
Yeah,
say anything. I can't say anything else today.
you have people that played with him and amazing Morgan State alum as well that are in awe of what you're doing in this portrait. So,
Well, that means a lot. I thank all of you for your input. I hope I haven't bored you guys too much with my rambling. I'm not used to doing my Bob Ross impersonation, but I'm trying to give y'all my best version of it.
oh wow, I really see that definition of the jawline now.
You see that now? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's that hard line that I was telling you about. Like, I only will use the black at the very end of that jaw, because that's really going to be what separates it from the rest of the face.
So when you do the black lines, what do you do to soften them? Is it that you just put water to lighten them up?
I'm about to show you right now. So what
Oh,
I'm doing is I'm mixing a little bit of blue
okay.
with this dark brown right here that I've been using, this chocolate that I keep on referencing. And what I'm gonna do, let me pull it down so you can kind of see that. So this jawline right here, right? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this dark brown and I'm gonna go over it, because you remember I told you black is so strong of a color that no matter what you paint over it, you can still see it. But what it
Mm,
will do is soften it up a little bit. So it's not just a harsh black line. You're seeing a gradation now go into it. You starting to see it?
yes.
That blend. And now I can go back and add brown without the blue and take that even further inside to make that gradation spread out even more.
Oh. Mhm.
So it takes away the harshness of the black while still leaving the impact.
It actually gave it some contour. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Do the same thing on the other side. Use a smaller brush though, so. Easier for y'all to see it when I do this?
Either way, it was good flat as well.
Boom. Yeah. That blue, man, it really does a great job darkening up the black without being too harsh. So now I'm gonna take that over to the ear. Try to see this up so y'all can see it fully. So this ear right here, on the bottom, we're gonna have a shade across the bottom of it. So
Mm.
Yeah. Give a little bit more of a wide. So it's allowed us to really bring that ear to the point that it's starting to pop off of the background a little bit. Give that hard edge on the end of the face. Now I'm gonna do that with the whole top of his head.
We're coming into the final 20 minutes of what has been just a truly, truly great session here. Any questions, you guys continue to put them in the chat. I have linked our Professional Athletes Foundation website as well as Aaron's website. For any other information, you have our information here. We will definitely get back to you, but continue to share your comments and questions. Definitely want to make sure that we have answered everyone's questions before we end the session at 3:00.
Janice, I told you we was going to find a way to have some fun now. I ain't know how it was going to go, but we said,
sure. For sure.
we're going
I
to
have
make
no
it
doubt.
good.
Your talent alone was going to carry this thing off amazingly, and
Don't sell yourself short. You have made this a seamless process. There's no way I could read comments and paint at the same time. I really appreciate you making this a very cohesive and easygoing.
Thank you as well. I think we both
time.
really wanted to honor George, and in our unified mission of doing that, really made this a easy process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, to all of you that have been watching, I did not expect this many people to be on for the entire time. So I really do appreciate everybody that has taken this time to really listen to our conversation, hear us give, hear me give my inspiration that I've taken from George's life and his work, to his family. Obviously, you guys absolutely still have my condolences and sympathy. I know that, November is not a time that was that far away. So it's not like you even have enough time to really go through a full grieving process since, we're still in the middle of things right now. But I really hope that this, piece is something that you guys love and will appreciate, and will definitely be able to remember him by.
So is that one of how many art rooms in your home there, Aaron?
About 3. I got about 3 spaces like this in the house, and it's probably going to get a bit worse because me and my lady have just closed on a new place, and that one has more rooms in it than this one does. So more than likely the studio will be expanding. But I'm in a house of creatives, so it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I think all of my kids might end up being better than me.
Well, I think that's usually the mission and the goal of parents is to have, your kids be better, know better. So kudos.
Absolutely.
We're already seeing that your mission is close to being accomplished.
Right. We do the best we can with what we have. Isn't that right?
Right.
I'm actually starting to like this. Okay. Now, what I'll do before we get off, so everybody can at least see a idea of what the finish will look like.
Right.
I'm gonna try to knock out some of the shirt of his.
Oh, yes. That'll be great. So for most of your canvases with acrylics, you just allow them to dry. There's no sealant or anything that you need to put on top of the canvas?
That's once it's done. Once it's done, sometimes I'll use a varnish. Sometimes I'll use a resin. Sometimes, honestly, if it's one of those rough type of rugged pieces I spoke about earlier, I won't use anything and I'll just let it be. But with this one, I think I'll put some kind of varnish on it when I get done, make it shine a little bit. Because like I said, I want his skin to really glow.
Got it.
But all of that is done after the piece itself is finished.
Mhm.
Thing about art. If you're an art lover out there and you buy art, always make sure your artist paints the side of his canvas. If he doesn't
Oh,
paint the
really?
sides, I don't know if you could really trust him.
Why is that?
I don't know. That's just a personal rule of mine. Like I don't like when people just I don't like when people just leave just the canvas itself is the only part. It's like the whole canvas is supposed to have paint on it. That's why I like painting. My favorite canvases to paint on are unstretched canvases. Because with
Mm.
those, you got to paint them to the edge. You don't know where the edge is going to be until you throw it on. So you got to paint those things to the edges. And then when you wrap them around your wood at the end, it looks the way a canvas is supposed to look. But you got some artists that they just go to the edge and then they stop. So then I'm one of the people where if I'm in a gallery and I'm looking at a piece of art, I walk around the sides of it. I want to look at it from every angle. So I'll let this dry a little bit, but it'll be the shirt. I'm really gonna do that as like a navy blue. So it's still wet right now, but as it dries, it'll start to lighten up, and then I'll add a few more layers onto it. And you use that blue up here too.
That's great how you showed blue as a color and as well as a contour color.
Well, that's a beautiful thing about black skin. There's so many colors in it. You know what I mean? Like when certain people look at other people's flesh, like they just see brown. Me, I love painting people of color. Not that it doesn't happen when you paint somebody white as well, but just with the more color that is in somebody's face, you see all of the colors in the spectrum. Like if the sun is hitting any part of your skin, it's gonna glow bright orange or yellow. If there's a low light somewhere, then it could be blue. You could see purple in there, pinks. Like colors dance off of colors. So when you have flesh, like right now, if I'm looking at my face I see orange right here, It's some white highlights right here. It's some blues down here. If I was painting myself, those are the colors that I'd be using. So I don't ever want, like, again, why not just do a cartoon? If I'm gonna paint colors, I'm gonna paint colors the way that I see them. You know what I mean? So yeah, I use, so like whenever I have blue on my palette, I find all of the places on the canvas where I know blue goes, and I add blue there. You know what I mean? Because that adds to the depth. It's like, and when you look at it, you might not be able to pick it out naturally, but when you look at different areas, you can be like, oh, it's blue under there, and it's a little bit of yellow in there, and yo, that's orange right there. Like, oh, that's brown. Like, appreciate you, my brother. Yo, all right, bet. And I'll email you too once I talk to the dude Scott. All right. Thank you, bro.
Aaron, I think for the last maybe 2 minutes or so, what do you think about leaving it up on the screen in case people want to get a screenshot or
Oh
something?
yeah. That'd be great. Okay,
You
so
know.
I'll do that. So let's see. Hold up. That blue is just the artist in me won't let people take a screenshot while that blue is still wet. Let me add a little bit more brown to that.
Okay. We have 8 minutes, so we have some time. But
all right,
definitely,
cool. Let me get this forehead right. And then yeah, that'd be great. I can do that for like the last 2 minutes. Time check, what we looking like?
we have about 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I think I feel comfortable with it now. That good? Can you see it? If anybody that wanted to take a screenshot or I'll hold it up here for about a minute, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great angle because I guess for how it is, it also shows you in the.
Oh yeah, you can't see me on there. Here I go.
Yeah.
Oh, I changed the lighting on it. Let me see if I can. Yeah.
I know.
If it's too much of me in the frame, the light starts focusing on me.
Oh, I'm learning all these new tricks.
Look, we learning as we go. That's all it is.
That's it. So I think we have about 5 more minutes. If you want to do any more strokes on it, or if you have any final comments you would like to make, we definitely have thanked everyone for participating and joining today. We are beyond honored to celebrate the legacy of Mr. George Knock. We thank his family for being a part of this event and allowing us to honor him. We're just very thankful for this opportunity.
Absolutely. I second all of that. Extremely honored for the opportunity, and it's been great to actually have a chance to get the family's input, to hear from people that played with George, that went to school with him, that grew up with him, that, you know, actually knew the man, you know. So for me, myself, you know, I feel as though I feel as though I knew him from all that I've researched of him over the years. But for the ones that actually did know him and have those experiences, to be able to look at this piece and see him in it is all I can really ask for. So I appreciate you guys. Every time I hold it up to look at it, I feel like I gotta show it to the side. I'm like, oh, people are watching me do this. I gotta make sure they can see it too.
That face you just made looked just like your daughter when she came into the room. So that's what I was laughing at.
Yeah. What can I say, man? All of my kids have my exact face. My exact face. Their mothers get tired of hearing it.
Aaron, in these last couple of minutes, I just want to definitely just say thank you to you as well. It's truly been a pleasure these last few hours. I've learned so much. And so thank you for sharing your talents with us. Thank you for being a part of us being able to honor George. So I definitely did not want to leave the session without thanking you as well.
Leslie just said, "Don't leave yet." So she must want to hop on and check everything. Let me show this to her so she knows that we actually made some headway. Like,
yes.
Appreciate you. Thanks, JJ.
All right.
Sit down.
All right.
You guys have a good one.
Later.
Bye.